I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. Welcome back to our hour two of today's broadcast. Happy to have you if you're listening on our website at neighborschoice.com or our radio affiliates. Make sure you save it to this station if you are listening on radio, because you want to check out every live broadcast we do, where you can find news that you don't get anywhere else, like news about science, news about economics, news about politics and culture, art, anthropology, ethics. We get into all the good stuff. And it's right here available for you every day for free, no charge. Just come on in and let's figure out things together. So here's the story I wanted to cover. It's a story in the New York Times, the state media outlet. Want to be Pravda. They try real hard. They're jealous of Pravda. They wish they could be Pravda. That's their inspiration, is Pravda. Of course, they don't know the truth at all, but they want to be Pravda. They want to be good little state media organs, and they do the best they can. How many wars have they sold? How many, the New York Times talks about they care about social justice, right? How many women are dead today because of wars that the New York Times lied the American public into going after? Oh, they don't want to hear about that, do they? How many people of color are dead today because the New York Times lied us into wars of intervention that were disgusting acts of globalist imperialism? How many women are disfigured today or maimed around the world because the New York Times lied the American people into war? Now, they weren't the only ones, but it's just because other people are guilty doesn't mean they're not guilty of the same lies. How many people of color are displaced, maimed, injured, terrorized, exploited, enslaved because of the lies that the New York Times sold the American public to go into places like Iraq and places like Libya, Syria, Afghanistan? How many? Say their names, New York Times. Say their names. Say their names. Say their names, New York Times. You state media hacks, liars for war, disgraceful, cheap imitators of justice that you act like. They don't say the names of the victims that they have participated in hurting. Flesh and blood victims all over the globe. Marginalized folks, disabled folks, trans folks. How many people who are trans were hurt in countries around the world that the New York Times has lied the American public into intervening and destroying and doing regime change? Whoa, they don't want to talk about that, see? Because they don't know how to think. If they knew how to think, maybe they'd realize how wicked their disgusting media outlet has been in hurting the marginalized around the world. That's what fake media outlets do. They act like they're the saints, but they sell out for a dime, basically. They sell out so cheaply, so arrogantly. How many people have been lost a loved one because of the New York Times lying the American people into war? How many folks who are women are crying out for the loss of their children because of the New York Times and their lies selling us into wars? They have a wicked, disgusting track record. But let's read their latest press release for the status quo. Titled, "The Rich Kids Who Want to Tear Down Capitalism." Sounds like Stalin. Sounds like the same guy that Walter Duranty at the New York Times lied and covered up the mass Holodomor starvation campaign that Stalin put into famine, killing what, 10 to 11 million people more in Ukraine? And Walter Duranty of the New York Times covered it up. So when they talk about rich kids who want to tear down capitalism, it sounds like every decadent socialist and communist dictator they've always shilled for. Title, "Socialist-minded millennial heirs are trying to live their values by getting rid of their money." No, they want to steal poor people's money. But that's how the New York Times spins it, because they're hacks for the establishment. They're hacks for war in Libya and Syria. They're hacks for mass incarcerating folks like Biden. He can spend 50 years locking people up for nonviolent, victimless crimes, and the New York Times would do everything they can to make sure that man's elected. But they're lying. And so we're going to see how they lie in this press release for the establishment. Lately, Sam Jacobs has been having a lot of conversations with his family lawyers, they say. He's trying to gain access to more of his $30 million trust fund. At 25, he's hit the age when many heirs can blow their money on harebrained businesses or a stable of sports cars. He doesn't want to do that, but by wealth management standards, his plan is just as bad. He wants to give it all away. "I want to build a world where someone like me, a young person who controls tens of millions of dollars, is impossible," he said. A socialist since college, Mr. Jacobs sees his family's extreme plutocratic wealth as both a moral and economic failure. He wants to put his inheritance towards ending capitalism. So little Jacob wants to eat, or Sam Jacobs, he wants to eat crickets and he wants to live out in the forest, right? He'd do that for a week at Burning Man, but he wouldn't do it for a year. He wouldn't want to live in the frigid cold or the austerity of living outside of capitalism. But he likes to pretend. He likes to have make-believe. So he's a socialist since college, like all rich decadent. Okay, I added that part. All right. I'll just try to read as much without commentary because I can't top the satire of fake news in its articles in the New York Times. Mr. Jacobs sees his family's extreme plutocratic wealth as both a moral and economic failure, and he wants to use his money to undo systems that accumulate money for those at the top and that have played a large role in widening economic and racial inequality. Millennials will be the recipients of the largest generational shift of assets in American history, the great wealth transfer, as finance types call it. Tens of trillions of dollars are expected to pass between generations in just the next decade, and that money, like all wealth in the United States, is extremely concentrated in the upper brackets. Mr. Jacobs, whose grandfather was a founder of Qualcomm, expects to receive up to $100 million over the course of his lifetime. Most of his fellow millennials, however, are receiving a rotten inheritance, debt, dim job prospects, and a figment of a social safety net. The youngest of them were 15 in 2011 when Occupy Wall Street drew a line between the have-a-lots and everyone else. The oldest, if they were lucky, were working in a post-recession economy even before the current recession. Class and inequality have been a part of the political conversation for most of their adult lives. In their time, the ever-widening gulf between the rich and the poor has pushed left-wing politics back into the American political mainstream. President-elect Joseph Biden Jr. trailed Senator Bernie Sanders, the socialist candidate, by 20 points among millennial voters in this year's Democratic presidential primary. And over the last 6 years, millennials have taken the Democratic Socialists of America from a fringe organization with an average member age of 60 to a national force with chapters in every state in a membership of nearly 100,000, most of them under 35. Mr. Jacobs, as both a trust fund kid and an anti-capitalist, is in a rare position among leftists fighting against economic inequality, but he isn't alone in trying to figure it out. As he put it, what it means to be with the 99% when you're the 1%. Oh, wow. That's what they all want. They want to live in that fantasy. They feel bad that they've never had to work hard for their money. I mean, all the people that I know who are interested in these stupid critical theory ideas are all rich brats. They never had to work a job, never had to scrub potatoes, never had to work on a farm, never had to do scrub pots and pans till 4 in the morning to try to start their career off. They are angry and they're sad and they're resentful for the decadent life that they've had. Doesn't mean they haven't had real tragedies and terrible things like any human being, but they are angry at how lavishly decadent their life has been. And they want to fantasize that they are marginalized. They want to put those, they want to wear, they want to expropriate the experience of hardship by donating to institutions and very rich organizations that want to destroy capitalism. They don't understand anything about economics. They don't understand that regulations and corporate welfare and the Federal Reserve System. Federal Reserve System is a central bank is one of the planks of the Communist Manifesto, that those are the things which have allowed vast, giant corporate hegemonies to maintain their power in the economy generation after generation when they would naturally be disrupted by creative destruction from market entry. It is the regulations that these silly, useful idiots clamor for. More regulations they want. More regulations they want. Those are the very regulations which allow the entrenchment of corporate crony power generation after generation and slow the rest of us down and extract our wealth because we don't have the ability to innovate and create better products at better quality, at better service, at a better price. It's the folks who are economically ignorant but arrogant in their ignorance, like these rich trust fund kids behind the Antifa stuff. They're the ones who are the same useful idiots who have been causing the misery of the poor since the dawn of time, basically. People who think that they're better than everybody because they're rich and they feel like, well, I'm so better than everybody. I'm like a god. I have to destroy the very thing that just makes me so much powerful. So stupid. They wouldn't want to live in an anti-capitalist reality for 1 minute. They just think that they'll be like Uncle Joe Stalin and be able to have a nicer house than the rest of the comrades if they get their little communism. They think they'll get a state-sanctioned position, the little czar or something like that, where they can eat caviar and live in a nice, fine home while all the little peasants that they will create with their anti-capitalist fascist society that they want to have, they'll live in poverty. They'll live on rations. They'll live on bread lines, but they'll live in a nice, bigger mansion like Uncle Joe Stalin, their hero. So this is what the New York Times story is talking about. Heirs whose wealth, the article says, has come from a specific source, sometimes use that history to guide their giving. Pierce Delahunt, a 32-year-old socialist, anarchist, Marxist, communist, or all of the above, has a trust fund that was financed by their former stepfather's outlet mall empire. MX Delahunt takes non-gendered pronouns. When I think about outlet malls, I think about intersectional oppression. Of course you do, Delahunt. You just learned whatever you heard on TV. You just learned what decadent six-figure college professors told you. You're just parroting what they told you. He goes on, there's the originally indigenous land each mall was built on, plus the low wages paid to retail and food service workers, who are disproportionately people of color, and the carbon emissions of manufacturing and transporting the goods. With that on their mind, they say there, MX Delahunt gives away $10,000 a month, divided between 50 small organizations, most of which have an anti-capitalist mission and in some way tackle the externalities of discount shopping. So this little guy, or whatever, I don't know what MX stands for. I don't care to know. It doesn't matter to me. He just learned it from rich, decadent capitalists. So why do I have to take his little fantasy serious? MX Delahunt is the inheritor of a outlet mall empire. And he's mad because he's had a very cush life. And he wants to live like you and I. He wants to feel what it feels like to have to work hard to survive. But he doesn't know how to do it. So what he does is he spends money that he inherited on trying to make everybody else's life miserable by destroying capital structures so that he can live vicariously through our suffering. That's what this little guy wants. We'll take a quick break and continue unpacking this New York Times mythology on A Neighbor's Choice. Stay with us. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Looking to enhance your workout at home social distancing? There's no better way to do that than with a post-workout supplement from Fortify. It's the new all-in-one pre- and post-workout supplement. It's completely all-natural with no artificial flavors or sweeteners. Fortify Fit is the first of its type in the U.S. Fortify Fit combines all 10 of the latest sports nutrition ingredients in one canister. Build muscle, strength, endurance with Fortify Fit. Plus, it'll kickstart your immune system quickly, safely. Right now, you receive 25% off by using the code RADIO. Use the code RADIO to receive the 25% off discount. Fortify Fit, created and designed by board-certified Dr. Michael Lang. You know him as the radio host of Ask the Doctor. Get Fortify Fit with 2 delicious flavors, strawberry, watermelon, and fruit punch. Amazing results when using pre- and post-workouts. Fortify Fit, available at fortify.com. That's FORTIFEYE.com. Remember the EYE in Fortify. Dr. Michael Lang's Fortify Fit with 2 delicious flavors, keeping America fit and healthy during this time of precautionary change.
Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. A Neighbor's Choice is back. I'm David Gronowski, your host, and we're talking about this press release disguised as an article. And I say that for most everything. You know, my point is It's not like these people know that they're writing a press release. It's that it functions as a press release. It functions as narrative gatekeeping for perpetual war, perpetual banker control of the economy through crony regulations, subsidies, welfare, the whole corporate welfare scheme, the whole thing. And this article was talking about how great it is that these little rich brats spend all their inheritance trying to create anti-capitalist advances because they're so angry at the world that they never had to feel the riveting experience of having to literally work to survive and to eat and to survive and to flourish. So they want to wreck the capital structures for poor and middle-class folks like us, or whoever you are, rich too. But they want to destroy people's ability to have prosperity so that they can live vicariously through us suffering. That's what they want. They're angry that they didn't have to work hard. They're angry that they don't know how money is made. They're angry that they can blow all their money and they've inherited so much that they'll be just fine. And they want to feel alive, right? So they invest in these anti-capitalist structures to make us all plunge into more misery, more oppression, more poverty, and then they get to live vicariously through us, struggling to survive. They're like, oh, now I feel alive. I can look at all the suffering. I can see the bread baskets, and I get to have a nicer home like all the other comrades because I'm one of the czars, just like Uncle Joe Stalin. I heard such great things about from my rich, decadent, six-figure professors who themselves are funded by rich, decadent, millionaire, and billionaire anti-capitalists. That's why my friend Jerry Boyer put it well. That's why they used to call capital or economics the dismal science, because it was the aristocratic merchant class, the decadent, whether it was the aristocratic elites that hated the merchant class, the aristocratic people who use state power and privilege to exploit the middle class and the poor. They hated markets because markets allowed the middle class to not have to be dependent on these crony fascists. And so that's what the New York Times, I'm reading behind their press release and showing you the truth. They're trying to make a puff piece about how wonderful it is that these rich kids want to ruin the economic opportunities for all of us people trying to survive. But the reality is these rich kids want to live vicariously through us suffering. They want to plunge us into poverty and watch us like rats try to pull ourselves up, and they get to, ooh, I get to feel your pain. Yes. Sick. But that's what they want. They don't know how wealth is created. And they're angry that life's just too easy for them. They want to feel visceral reality, so they want to see it through us like lab rats. Listener online, Gokata says, good evening, glad to catch you live today. Well, great to have you. And all the others that are commenting. Always like hearing your feedback online. Our website, aneighborschoice.com. You can email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com. We'll be back in just a moment with more.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on. It's 2020.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Pine.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Pine Show.
This has just got me going on.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason and see of idiot.
The Chris Pine Show. Weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040 WHPO.
A warning from one of Georgia's top elections officials to Republican leaders and President Trump. Stop the unproven claims and calls to action about widespread voter fraud.
There are some nutballs out there who are going to take this and say, the president told me to do this. Essentially, you have to be responsible.
Gabriel Sterling says he and his family have received death threats. Attorney General Barr says the Justice Department's found no evidence of fraud, which would have tipped the results of the presidential election. Barr appointing U.S. Attorney John Durham as special counsel to investigate claims of Russian interference in the 2016 election. A bipartisan group of lawmakers has introduced a $908 billion COVID-19 relief proposal. It includes state and local aid, a federal bump up in unemployment, and small business loans.
The subject of additional coronavirus relief is on the minds of lots of our members.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he wants to send President Trump a bill that he will sign. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
A Neighbor's Choice is back, covering this story that is an example of the mythologizing taking place by the corporate press. This article called "The Rich Kids Who Want to Tear Down Capitalism, Socialist-Minded Millennial Heirs Are Trying to Live Their Values by Getting Rid of Their Money." They don't get rid of their money and live in the forest. They're using electricity. They're using all the conveniences of capital. But they don't know how capital is formed because they're inheritors of wealth and they're angry at life. They want to feel real. They want to feel authentic. And that's why they want to destroy what everybody else has so that they can live vicariously through us struggling with subsistence level garbage that socialism always produces. Meanwhile, they'll stay in their nicer big mansions like Uncle Joe Stalin stays in, because just like cronies that they are, they always make good deals with the so-called communists that come in, make obscene profits for a few, communist scraps for the rest of us. Let's conclude the article. At the conclusion, it says, to Miss Thomas, one of these rich kids, the prospect of contributing to a solidarity economy is refreshingly tangible expression of her values, compared to the abstraction of accumulating portfolio returns. At some point, these numbers on a screen are imaginary, just like my ideology, she said. But what's not imaginary is whether you have shelter, food, and a community. Those are true returns. So let's take that. She says, what's not imaginary, this little puff piece, press release for the status quo in the New York Times. They end it with this little nice puff quote. But what's not imaginary is whether you have shelter, food, and a community. Shelter. How do you get shelter? You have to have voluntary, nonviolent exchange of resources. You have to have savings. If you don't have capital saved, how can you build something? If you're dropped off in a forest, how are you going to be able to get to a state where you can have an advanced structure of concrete or nice woodwork that lasts with a foundation that's solid? It takes capital. You have to put some money away or some wealth away or some resources or technology. You have to accumulate it such that you will have time over time to be able to build a home. But she doesn't understand that. She's a rich crony. Just like every rich crony capitalist, she wants to destroy the real hard workers like you and I who work for a living, who have to sweat, who have to worry about the bills, who have to worry about electric bill. They have to worry about all the problems of our rigged crony capitalist economy that she benefits from and the other guys in this story benefit from. But they feel mad that their life's so easy that they want to make us have more misery so that they can live vicariously through the raw, visceral reality of the misery that they've accentuated and spread to us. So she says, what's not imaginary is whether you have shelter. So food, where do you get food? She says. Food comes because you have to be able to learn how to save money. How can you have a farm if you don't save? If every time you have a cow born, you eat it right there, that's not saving. You have to let the cow mature. You have to let the grass grow. You have to let other cows be born. And you build a herd and you have all this stuff. That's called capital. But she's a rich crony capitalist. She doesn't know how it got to her. She just knows she has it, and she's angry that she's so rich, and she doesn't have anything to do. So she wants to play with you and my life like lab rats. She wants to make our children suffer so she can have some play projects, little imaginary play projects, so she gets to feel better about herself. She gets to atone for her decadence that she inherited precisely because of the regulations and government mismanagement and distortion of our economy. She doesn't know that. She's weaponizing her ignorance. And the final thing she talks about is community. Those are true returns. Shelter, we talked about how you need capital to have shelter. Food, we talked about how you need capital to have food. Food, see, they hear capital, and because they're low information people, they hear greed, greed, greed. No, the people who they inherited their money from, they may be greedy. Maybe they lobbied for regulations and state intervention, which is what allowed them to have such massive transfers of wealth to their kids generation after generation. Maybe that's the case for them. But for folks who have to live in the real world, we have to save our money. And it's hard and it's difficult to do when you have so much crony, capitalist garbage mucking up the economy. You can't start a company without spending thousands of dollars with regulation compliance. You can't do anything without an occupational license. You can't start any idea without having all kinds of regulations that are designed to protect these rich brats so they get to have money to keep making your life miserable. They want to make your children have misery by destroying capital structures, and then they get to watch and be God and say, look, I get to help them. We're going to give them bread now because we've ruined their lives. How sick do these bigots have to be? How stupid do they have to be? But of course, my friend that wrote the letter told me the New York Times readers are not dumb. They just don't know what they don't know. Right? So we have to, they're very, very educated. But they want to destroy every aspect of human civilization because they're angry that life was too good for them, at least when it comes to economic decadence. They inherited the economic decadence because of government intervention, rigging the economy, and they want to rig the economy even more to further plunge us into poverty, which will end up giving them more power to keep ruining our lives and feeling good about it. I'm going to talk about class consciousness. Let's talk about class consciousness. They don't know the first thing about the consciousness of the expropriator class that is invested with the state and state worship and the folks who are expropriated. So community, she says community is a good value. And I agree. But the community that she has in mind and that these rich brats in the New York Times have in mind is a community that sacrifices some for the greater good. That's the community they want. We believe in a community that is win-win. That's what a market does. You want something, the other person wants something, you exchange those things, and together, with your talent and your diverse ideas and your talent, your stack of skills, all the different things, you put those together and you figure out the best use of your life and your talent and your skills and your capital. And together, that's community. You're working together. You're working together to do the things that are in the best interest of your families. And these people who inherited stolen wealth, they're right. There is a rigged economy, but it's the state that they worship that rigged it all along. And of course, the state is working on behalf of corporate interests. I understand that, but they can't figure out nuance. These are the kind of folks that when a group says they're anti-fascist, they're like, well, that means they're against fascism. The brand says it. That's just it. That's the low resolution analysis that these kind of bigots have. The brand says anti-fascist, therefore, if I don't like fascism, I have to like Antifa. That's how these people, it's like, are you kidding me? Is that the level of analysis you want to bring to the table? Whew, it's amazing. It's breathtakingly, insanely stupid. These people can threaten and pick on grandmas in the street, but if their brand says Antifa, I don't like fascism, therefore the brand that says Antifa, that must be the team I have to pick. I mean, it's like, are you kidding? Seriously. Whew. Just the stupidity of it all. So they want shelter, they want food and community, and they're going to destroy every last one of those things for us. You can't, if you want to innovate in shelter, you want to make a house more affordable for the poor, it's okay. You can't, because rich corporate fascist brats that are in this New York Times story, they are part of families that create regulations that make it extremely difficult for you to make housing cheaper and better quality at a lower price. There are zoning laws. You got every regulation for what nail you can use, what thing you can use. You want to build your own house, you have to go through so much compliance that protects entrenched, government-dependent oligarchies or oligarchs. And the same goes for food. If you want to start a farm, it's extremely regulated. You can't get in there and start a farm. You have to pay for this fee. I've done agriculture. I know what it has to go through. You have to pay through so much just to even get started that the kids who inherited their agriculture farm, because of those regulations, they're sitting high and you're getting screwed over because you can't comply with the regulation costs to even get started having a chance at competing. And these are the ignorant bigots that get these puff pieces in the New York Times, talk about how excited they are to introduce anti-capital values to dismantle your children's ability to have a fair chance at life. So you can't build food. And now they want to make it where they're going to tax meat, which has saturated fat in it, meat, which has essential vitamins and nutrients you need to have a healthy life. Meat, which good, high quality meat is essential for human flourishing. And they want to tax that and replace it with goop, plant goop, industrial goop, sludge. That they make it smell and look like meat, and they say, here, eat your garbage sludge burger. So I don't want, we try to create shelter, but these rigged crony capitalists that want to bring down capitalism, that the New York Times does puff pieces for, they don't make it easy to create innovations to make housing more affordable. They do everything they can to regulate production of food, and then they want to tax meat. They want to tax things that are essential for nutrition. And they want to subsidize garbage food, which creates diabetes, heart disease, cancer, arthritis, Alzheimer's. All these things we're finding out are metabolically based, which are inherently pushed by the worst metabolic fuel sources you could imagine. Big plant, big wheat, big soy, big corn, big sugar, big vegetable oil. That stuff gets pumped into your body because it's subsidized at your expense by force. And then when you're poor, because the Janet Yellen geniuses are destroying your economy, you got to buy that vegetable oil, which destroys your body, and be in misery and pain, and then have these jerks lecture you about how we got to take more freedom from you because you're a little bit too greedy. It's like, at what point do we tell them where to go, you know? And community. So that's the final thing. That's the worst thing. Oh, we want to have community. Well, hey, I've got a community. I want to have community. So I want to create, I want to advance the work of Dr. Michael Assanti, who uses doxycycline and azithromycin, which are cheap generic antibiotics to kill cancer stem cells. I want to contribute to that. Oh, wait, your God, the state that you worship, little socialist clowns in the New York Times, these rich kids, your God says the standard of care must be chemo, radiation, and surgery. So it's dead in the water to even advance the research for generic, non-toxic, cheap, affordable antibiotics to kill cancer stem cells. What if I want to contribute to the community? I heard someone down the road has a LENR technology, low energy nuclear reactions. They're doing low energy nuclear energy, right? Low temperature, not Jeb Bush energy, the good low energy. And you have those folks And they're trying to advance low temperature nuclear energy to create pollution-free, abundant energy. Oh, you can't do that because guess what? The economy is so rigged in the energy sector for wind farms and solar panels that by necessity require massive government subsidy of your money to get into their pockets. And it's already rigged by these little rich brats who want to destroy capitalism, that the New York Times writes puff pieces, press releases on their behalf. You got to get mad before you know what to do, right? Before you can get the right mindset. Don't stay mad, but it's good to feel the reality of these ridiculous, bigoted ideologies, wanting to tear down the last vestiges of market prosperity and then tell you, oh, it's because we're going to help you with shelter, food, and community. When you say God desires mercy, not sacrifice, they said, what's that got to do with anything? There is no God. We're not religious. We're sophisticated. But we're going to sacrifice you because it is better that one man die than the whole nation perish. And if you think differently than us, we'll delete you from social media. We'll block you from your bank account. We'll block you from merchant's account. We'll delete your ability to have any social standing as much as we can. We'll block, banish, and harm you. We'll dox you. We'll do everything we can because you think differently. Because they cannot handle difference. They cannot handle diversity. When you are owned by a hive mind, the only thing you can see is must conform, must conform. That's what the ancient world was. When they said it's time for you to give up your life to the God of the Aztecs or the God of ancient Germans, you didn't get to have a say in that. You didn't get to have, well, wait a second, I'm going to go to trial. No, that was an invention of Christianity that these rich brats in the New York Times story hate. They hate what Christianity has provided because they hate what they don't have. And they have such decadence, they want the opposite. They want misery, but they don't want to live in that misery. They want to bring down the capital structure so that you and your family has to live in misery and they get to vicariously live through your suffering. That's what they want. They know not what they do, though, don't they? They're caught up in that hive mind, rote, mimetic viciousness. And they try to wrap it up in Christian aesthetics because, just like every Westerner, they are haunted by the cross. I'm David Gornosky. We'll take a quick break and return after these short messages. Hello, this is David Gornosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187, Equal Housing Lender.
Hi, I'm Randy Jackson. When I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, I also learned about its serious connection with cardiovascular disease. I knew I needed to make some major lifestyle changes that would help me manage my type 2 diabetes. These tips help me stay in the know. Keep active. normalize critical health numbers, opt for a healthy lifestyle, and work with a healthcare provider.
I'm Dr. Dan Jones. Please visit your own healthcare provider, and for more information, visit iknowdiabetes.org.
David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. A Neighbor's Choice returns. So glad to have you listening, looking at our comments online. We see some great discussions. Pete says it's called virtual signaling. Don't worry, it's coming down soon enough. Another says, is it so? I hope so. It's so depressing. We've got a lot of work to do. Andy says, slay, yes. Jim says, amen, brother. Well, looks like we got a little bit of a agreement here because we all know it's true. It doesn't matter how much the media wants to lie every day. It can work for a portion of the population. But the personhood revolution that's been unleashed is more powerful than their lies. Their empire of lies cannot sustain. The personhood revolution deconstructs strong structures. And it doesn't matter how much the wannabe priests of the New York Times want to put, I say this again, I'm going to use these analogies because they work. They want to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty was a ritual human sacrifice. That's why he had a great fall. And all the king's horses and all the king's men could not, would not, cannot put Humpty, the sacrificial pagan god, back together again. Can I get an amen? It's all there in the children's rhymes. Society is moving in a direction. The folks who think they're woke are not woke. They're asleep. And they're going to make us all broke. But in the end, their empire of lies will not sustain. Because once you understand the lie, that it is not better that one should die for the greater good, once you realize that, once it spreads in your art, once it spreads with a camera phone that videotapes the reality of war and brings it to you, once you see the reality of a nanny state, once you see, you can't unsee it. You can say all day long, there ought to be a law against raw milk. But then when you see an Amish farmer carted off to a prison cage with violent rapists, how can you unsee that once you see that? When you see that Amish farmer's kid crying for daddy or mommy to come home because they sold what? Milk? They sold milk that has been consumed by human beings since the dawn of time and before? That's worthy of putting someone in a cage? You don't even eat cage eggs anymore, but yet we will put a raw milk farmer in a cage with rapists. Once you see this stuff, you can't unsee it. And that's what I mean by Humpty Dumpty cannot be put back together again. You can't go back to the old tyrannical way of might makes right. You can try, and it can work in bits and pieces, but it doesn't create unanimity anymore. It won't create the unanimity that's required to maintain a totalitarian hellscape that people who want to be God want to create in their own image. So the good news is that liberty will win and personhood will win. The bad news is it's going to be a tough fight, and it's going to take a lot of courage. And courage is hard because courage requires skin in the game. Courage requires being exposed to social alienation, demonization, false accusation. It requires being able to stand up and heal the leper when everybody says, don't touch the leper, that's disgusting. It requires the courage to look at a Samaritan and say, hey, not so bad after all. You can come into the tent as well. It takes courage to go out on a limb and hang out with someone who's a part of the establishment and try to bring them out of it, because the people who are radical revolutionaries say, hey, burn down the establishment. It takes courage to not give in to the temptation of vengeance or the temptation of apathy. It takes courage to think for yourself, to work and to innovate and to create the solutions necessary to be a part of the creation process. We were invited to be co-creators in the image of God, to create using the atoms of this universe to create new things that can alleviate the suffering of the poor. So the one thing that the left gets right is that the poor are suffering. But what they get wrong is that their agenda for sacrifice will not help the poor. It will not help the vulnerable. It will make them worse. But what will help the poor and what will help the vulnerable is us, you and I, rolling up our sleeves and getting to work to be co-creators in this reality, to heal diseases through innovation, non-toxic metabolic solutions for diseases, to heal pollution with energy too cheap to meter, created by the market. And yes, we'll let those decadent little socialist wannabes have some of it too, because God makes the rain fall on the just and the unjust. God desires mercy, not sacrifice, and their false idols will crumble and fall, but we'll be there to pick them up, the human persons behind those idols, and bring them alongside us. I'm David Gronowski. Godspeed.